Okay, we're going to get right into it. Today, we're talking about perspective. Perspective is simply the way that we see something, it's an attitude. And we all have different perspectives. Everyone's entitled to their own. And we also have a duty to respect that everyone has their own perspective. It's influenced by so many things. It's influenced by our personality, by our upbringing, by our economic status, by our education, by social media. And it comes, on all levels of consciousness. So subconsciousness, unconsciousness, and then of course at the conscious level, the decisions that we make. I think the most common or well-known probably example of perspective is the glass half full or glass half empty example. Is it full? Is it empty? Who knows? What do you think? And I think that's influenced by whatever mood we're in or whatever, scenario we might be going through in that moment. The other example I think of right offhand is like the image of the 6 or the 9, and there's like one guy looking at it from one angle and the other guy from the other. Neither of them are wrong. They can respect each other, that what they see is what they're saying, that is their perspective. It just really illustrates that depending on your vantage point or your experiences, a different perspective is very normal. And if we're open to the idea that a different perspective is normal versus combative or judgmental or wrong, then we can, breed some compassion and understanding instead of creating a problem where it probably doesn't belong. The most important thing I feel about perspective that I want to dig into a little bit is that it isn't definitive. It's not one way and then that's it. We get to choose. So back to that, depending on the mood or depending on your upbringing, it's able to mature, it's able to evolve, and it shapes the narrative and our ability to move forward in life and what we view as success in our relationships and our jobs across the board. So here's an interesting thought. And I think this a lot. I don't know where I heard it originally, but neurologically, we can only think one thought at a time. Maybe you've heard this as it pertains to like multitasking. It's literally impossible for your brain, even though we want to convince ourselves otherwise, to do more than one thing, to focus on more than one thing at a time. So neurologically, you can only think one thought at a time. And as it pertains to perspective, that can be positive or negative. How you respond to any given situation, positively or negatively, is determined by whatever thought you train yourself to have, you mature and evolve and choose to have in that scenario. It's, of course, based on all of those influences and the conscious thoughts. But with practice, you can train yourself to think positively as opposed to negatively, because you can't do both at the same time. Now, does that mean that every scenario in your life is going to be positive? No, there's going to be negative moments. There's going to be hard things to deal with. There are going to be negative and difficult people, but how you respond to that is your choice. You get to decide, like, I'm going to be angry about this, or stop yourself in your tracks and say, no. I can only think one thought at a time. I'm not going to be angry about this. I'm going to see the gift in this scenario. And as you get better at seeing the gift or the positive perspective of trivial things, when those big, hard hitting things come at you, you're more equipped, more trained. It's your default setting to go to a positive perspective and see the good, as opposed to the position of a victim or complaining or the negative perspective. I think the number one thing that you can do is stay present in that moment and make sure that you check yourself. Remind yourself, this is what I can control right now. I'm not going to worry about what happens next. I'm not going to worry about everybody else. I'm not going to worry about how this could affect me down the road in a negative way and just spiral out of control. I'm going to isolate it to right now. I'm going to be right here and I'm going to decide right now how I want to view this scenario. I have this rock that my high school volleyball coach gave me 20 years ago, 25 years ago. But the rock says, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And I have this all these years later sitting right on my desk to see every day because it's an attitude, it's perspective, and it's a reminder that what goes on up here in any given moment is going to determine the trajectory of my emotions, my attitude, the success that I have in any given endeavor. It's not easy. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes effort, it takes little reminders like the rock on my desk. But just the premise, just the initial idea, if you take anything from this, is that I can only think one thought at a time, positive or negative, and that you get to choose, can make all the difference in the world.